I like to start with Eric because this is my opportunity to catch up with Eric too. So tell me, what's what's good in your life?
Yeah, lots of good stuff coming up for sure. We have a lot of things in the pipeline that I'm really excited for. Something that just happened today was for people who don't know, some of the MLSs across the country got hacked. So anything that's backed by Rapid Sony. So Cincinnati, my market with my team and stuff, it was one of the markets that got hacked. And of course, I get like two listings that are rural listings, I should say. So it's been like a challenge, but something we just did today was we put a post out there. We just listed today. We put a post out there. We're just giving away 3 $100 gift cards. Share it, and you're entered to win. And I think within like 15 minutes, we had like 40 shares, like 7 showings scheduled. This is without an MLS, and then on top of that, we have already received an offer. So can't complain for like how that thing was going. Like I'm thinking like, oh, this is gonna be terrible, but no, it turned out pretty good.
Wow. Okay. I love it. So getting creative, like who needs an MLS? Let me just use social media.
Right. I mean, I'd prefer the MLS. Like it'd be great if it was back because like appraisers can't run comps right now. Nobody can schedule showings. Stuff that was pending previously that fell out, like you can't change the status. So there's a lot of like creativity going around, but a lot of the agents up there are doing a really good job of thinking outside the box and doing stuff differently.
Interesting. All right. 2 clap.
Nope, it's going for water.
Cool. Aldo, hey, good to see you here, Aldo.
Hey, Randy.
What's new? What's a win? Share a win.
Sure win. I booked a trip to Spain.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to Spain and day after Thanksgiving.
Nice. I love it, man. You
Big deals.
I know you always like to travel, so it's good to know that you keep keeping it going, buddy. Every year there's something good.
That's going to be Madrid, Budapest, and Vienna.
Oh, solid, dude. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Good stuff. 2 clap. All right. Well, Nigel, since you have your camera on, I'm just going to ask you.
Hey Randy, one win for me was one of my listing, which was a church that finally sold. Took about 7 months, and it was kind of a relief for me. So that was my small win. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's awesome, man.
Good stuff, man.
Thanks.
Good luck. And Belinda, you want to share a win and we'll get going?
I'm kind of eating cheese nuts. Can you give me a minute?
All right, go ahead. Finish your cheese nuts. Anybody else want to share a win?
Everybody else is like, no, we're also eating.
No, we're all eating. It's dinner time somewhere, lunchtime here.
Nice.
But all right, cool. Well, Belinda, there's your chance, and we'll go and move to the training mastermind part.
Well, I have a lot of, but they're not necessarily all real estate related. I will say I went to well, I booked, since we're talking about travel, I'm going to Cabos in October after the women's conference. So that's a good thing. And also I went to my first, I go to Awaken Church now. So in San Marcos, and I went to my first midweek last night. Oh my gosh. Blew my mind. I've never seen a midweek so on fire. So that was amazing and blow away for me.
That's awesome.
I'll try to have real estate related.
Yeah, no, it's the wins are for anything, personal, business, doesn't matter. And yeah, I know that church. That's where I go, and I know their Wednesday service. They go deep, man. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, so I was happy to be there.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
2 clap. All right. So shifting gears. So today we have a great topic that's very, very, I guess, I don't know if it's timely because the MLS isn't working, but
the Tampa one still is, and that's where I do it. So we're good, Tampa.
Okay, good. The San Diego one seems to be working. So
yeah.
but yeah, we're gonna talk over, go over working with the MLS, finding deals, and through it all, gaining market knowledge. And I think, I know it's great timing because Eric is kind of like in this live case study as we speak, entering a new market in Tampa. So it's kind of cool. I told him, like, it's awesome to watch him just roll up his sleeves in a new city, new area, and really doing what we preach, right? Going out there and literally all the things we talk about in these trainings and masterminds, like he's literally doing it right now from the beginning, starting from scratch, networking, open houses. I mean, you name it, he's like doing it. And this is one of the things, of course, that he's leveraging, right, is the MLS. And this is how he also was able to grow his team in Cincinnati, and how he achieved quick success with representing investors by strategically looking at particular listings where maybe not all the eyes are going to, right? And that's something Eric and I talked about last week when we were coming up with the topic. And I was like, this is great. Like, we got to talk about this because it's so good. So Eric is going to kind of lead the way. He's going to share his screen, even open up his kind of playbook to how he does it. And before we start that, just want to make sure we have our YouTube channel link in the chat. If you want to subscribe to that, that's where we're going to also post our recordings and any other content that's not from this as well. So that's there. It would be awesome if you subscribe. That helps boost the knowledge base for everybody that will be searching for what we talk about. And then Facebook community, if you're not in it, that is also in the chat. So if you want to join the community there, there's some conversations going back and forth on different topics. There's, investors asking for resources, agents asking for resources. So as we grow this community, the vision is, how can we also start doing business together, right? That would be the ultimate win for Eric and I, that we can actually start seeing investors and agents working within the community more. So that's it on housekeeping. And Eric, I'm going to allow you to share your screen, and feel free to take it away, and I'll chime in.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and exit out that portion. So before I share the screen, do you want me to kind of go through why we did this and how we started it? And then I'll go through and share it. It might be a little bit. So I'll do that real quick. So yeah. Doing this, I actually did this with one of the first flippers that I worked with, and it was really tough. When I first started working with him, it was literally right after COVID. It was really tough to come by deals, surprisingly, in the Cincinnati area, at least off market. There was a lot of wholesalers that were trying to figure out ways to get in houses. A lot of people weren't comfortable with that kind of contact. A lot of people were still trying to figure things out. So me and him were discussing, and there's a hot word search on the Cincinnati MLS where you can put in just what would be in the normal listing description. I think every MLS across the country has something similar, like a keyword, a hot word, something like that. So we actually sat down for a couple hours and just thought of like every thing we could possibly think of: probate, estate, TLC, literally anything you could think of. Like, it continued to go, handyman special, plumbing needed, stuff like that. We'd kind of group the words together, throw them on there, cash as is. And then what I did is I took that email or that MLS search, I made me the client, and I sent the search to me directly. So every morning, in Cincinnati, it updates at 3 p.m. So every day at 3 p.m., I'd open up my phone and I'd go through the 5 or 6 properties that would fit. And we always we did the zip codes that we preferred. And then we also did like a price point. So like, we weren't doing, just to try and keep it reasonable, we weren't doing houses less than like 80,000, 70 or 80,000, because anything less than that at the time was a tear down. And we weren't doing anything more than like, I think 300,000, because anything more than 300,000, if it was a flip, it was going to put you at the top of the market in Cincinnati. So just knowing the numbers, that's going to be an ARV like 600-700. You really limit your buyer pool, especially at that time. Now prices have gone up. So we did this, and we found a ton of deals off of it, actually. I think one year we did, just with him alone, I think we did 26 flips, and I think 17 of them were strictly just MLS. So the majority of our flips, and like every like real estate meetup that we were going to, they're like, how the heck are you doing this? And I'm like, well, we get 10 properties a day, like 4 of them would work out numbers wise, and we keep an eye on them. We'd let like the 1 or 2 days go by where people were just bidding it up like crazy, and the other 1 or 2 properties that remained, we're like, well, there's a reason they did. So let's go see it and see if we can't solve the problem or figure out something that other investors are missing out on. So we just did that consistently. So now that we're in Tampa, let me see if I can do this. I should just go straight to it, hopefully. So Zoom is going to make me use, 1 second. It's going to make me share my screen. It's going to make me quit and reopen. Randy, you want to take it for 2 seconds?
Oh, quit and
I
reopen.
haven't shared off Zoom in a while. Do you want to take it?
Well, I'm still the host, so I'm good.
Okay.
So you're going to be kicked off. Oh, I guess we lost him. Okay, he's going to come back.
Real quick, and I know like the MLS in Tampa and Florida is basically the exact same MLS like they use here in the LA, the CRMLS.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
It's very like the interface is like just exactly identical.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, like what Eric was starting to say, like, in terms of MLS, they do all look pretty much the same. So like the general things that he's talking about are gonna work. Pretty much on every MLS, they all have same things that you can use. And I agree. Like, give you insights of how we did it, and are still doing it. And Aldo knows, like, he's been around our community for many years. We literally like built our whole investing business from 2010 when I moved here, all literally off MLS. Everything. We had these filters. We had them come to our inbox. Acquisitions guys would pick up the phone and start dialing and calling the agents, and it was all through filters. That's it. And of course, we had the script that I like to use, which is, hey, would you be open to representing me as the buyer's agent as well? That's what worked for us, and we like that approach. But with Eric, I know he's bullish on going out there and submitting offers for his investors, especially I think when there's less competition, which I like. I love for you to get into some of that, Eric, where how are you navigating what you started saying, where you actually have less investors competing for that same property, right? Because I think that's where it gets challenging for a lot of investors starting out. Everyone's fighting over that new shiny, and I say shiny meaning like the ugliest home, right? In this essence. And it gets frustrating, and a lot of investors just kind of give up. They're like, oh, MLS doesn't work because like there's 30 offers on this property within 3 days. It's like, okay, well, maybe there's also another way. So take it away, Eric. Good to have you back. I think you're muted. Is he back, or is he there? Did we lose Eric again? Where is he?
He's there. He's
Goodness.
There
Technology today. So I was saying, luckily this isn't Google. If it was Google, it'd have taken me, I'd have had to like literally restart everything. Yeah, so we did this in Tampa. I still do it in Cincinnati. To me, it's a great way to kind of get an idea to see where price points are going. So I always, when I do this, I get a good idea of like how quickly homes are moving, investment properties at least, so I can keep my investors up to date. I get a good idea on like what price points are. And then I always run the comps on all these properties. So kind of subconsciously what I'm doing is I'm keeping a pulse on every neighborhood in the market. So we're not agents, both in Tampa and Cincinnati. We're not agents that we only work one zip code or one neighborhood. Like we work everywhere. So to me, being that market knowledge for everywhere, like in Cincinnati, if you were like, hey, this house is located within this pocket.
What do you want to show on the screen? Because right now we're seeing just a Zoom thing.
I did that just to make sure I could get in there. So
okay. Got it.
This is so I have it all kind of pulled up. So these are, and this is in the trash box from the other day because I was trying to find a good property. So this is how the email through Tampa comes through. And I'll do bigger screen for you guys, then I'll exit out of it when I'm done. So this is what it would look like for Tampa. So it's Pasco and Pinellas counties. I just have a search set up. Goes to me every morning. Typically comes into my inbox at 6:18 a.m. So it's usually around 6 a.m. every morning. And at first, when I first started doing this, I was telling Randy, I literally had to go into every single one of these properties and I just ran comps on all of them. And it doesn't mean I had to save the comps or do any analysis with it, but I would run the comps and say, okay, well, this is the ARV and Newport Richie. For St. Pete, this is probably ARV because it's a 3-bed, 1-bath, 900 square feet. So 325 is probably going to get, there's not going to be a lot of meat on the bones. Again, Newport Richie, it's farther away from Tampa, so it's going to be this price point. So I would run the comps until I got to the point where I could scroll through these, and then one like this, which is in Clearwater, which is voted one of the best beaches in the nation, and it has a ton of Airbnb, long-term rental. It has a ton of people that are looking to move there. So for a 4-bed, 3-bath, 1,500 square feet, it was priced at $370. After a while of running these and knowing what was going in Clearwater, how far away from the beach you had to be and everything like that, I saw this property come through and I was like, okay, this actually looks like it might be one that works. Like it might be one that is worth running. So what I do is I literally do this on my phone every morning. I take a screenshot of the property. And then later when I get some free time during the day is when I run the comps. So I pulled it up, just a quick one real quick. So this is like what the property would look like on the MLS. I just keep it within a quarter mile. I know that the Tampa MLS is pretty good with like letting me know the last time it's sold and everything like that. I know that they tried to list it and it canceled. So I can go back to that original listing and see why. They were at 350 when they tried it. It's active at 370. This one's actually still active, which is kind of funny because it's been on and off quite a bit. But it's back active. It's a 4-bed, 2.5-bath, 1,500 square feet. So typically when I'm running these comps, I'm just going through and looking for something that's similar bed, bath, and square feet count. And then I'll click it. Once I get into there, and I have it over here, so let me find it real quick. Here we go. We're just gonna leave that. Don't do this to me.
Yeah, move that off to the side. You can.
I know, yeah. I just don't want to hit deny because it's not going to say it. This is why I don't. If anybody wants to know why I hate Apple, this is like top 5 reason for me. So these would be the comps I'd run. Now again, this is a little bit easier of a form. Just compare like running comps down here compared to Cincinnati. I can run a comp down here in maybe like 2 minutes. And Cincinnati, it takes like 5 to 10. So the information's not as readily available. So here's the active. We got a 4-2, half bath, 1/2 bath, one car garage space, no pool. So anything that has a pool like this Cleveland, I would take out of it and everything like that. So I ran these properties. I would run them in the morning. And then what I would do, because I don't need that anymore, pull this up here, is I actually created this spreadsheet for all of my investors. I have no problem sharing this. It took us a while to get it up and running, but I have this spreadsheet that I created for all of my investors. So I put the address in there, and it makes it easy because I can share it off to them pretty quickly. So they have access to it. They can jump into this whenever they want. So it has the address, it has the list price, it has what we offered, because some of these we actually offered on just sight unseen, whether the offer was rejected, counter offer, and like some of the status we just have like comp sent, because some of them we didn't submit an offer on it. So I actually went out to the property on these, and I don't want to play it because I'm sure you guys don't want to listen to me talk, but I actually went out to the property on these, the ones that worked, that we had a counter offer, that it made sense, and just took a day, went out, took a quick 5-minute video on my phone, uploaded it into a Google folder, and just full transparency, Cincinnati, I could probably go in and get, right on the head for rehab budget. And Tampa, the costs are more expensive and the contractors are more expensive. So instead of doing that, what I've been doing is I'm actually taking these videos, I'm sending it to the investor, and I'm saying, hey, you need a new furnace, a new AC unit, new roof, new windows, new floor, new paint, new cabinets. I'm taking like my old Cincinnati rehab numbers, and I'm just literally almost doubling it just to start out. And I'm saying, hey, have your contractor go take a look at it and they get back to me on what you think the numbers are. So
Eric, I want to ask you something. So on this particular example, right, on row 7, 3. Oh, you just lost. Where is it? Go up.
Right here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
39116 Avenue. So you went to the property at what point? Because I know you don't go out to the property right away. You go there when what?
Once we got the counter that made sense. So our original offer on this was 190. they countered back. It was listed at 224. They countered back, I think, at like 215. And I said, okay, well, we're at least got some like wiggle room.
So how
And
did you determine what to offer? Did anyone go look at it, or you just did it all based on your experience now in terms of like, okay, we know the ARVs around here, and based on the
Yeah.
pictures, it's probably going to be roughly X amount to rehab. And here's the offer that our investor is willing to pay that, after reviewing the photos. Like, how did that take us through that?
Yeah, so the way we determined the offer was, so like 350. I know that most of my investors want to be all in about 70-75%. So I took the 350, multiplied it by the 75, looked at the photos, and just said, I don't see this being more than like a 60K rehab.
Okay.
So, or I'd say like, just off the top, 60K rehab. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this. I don't like offering sight unseen, but some of the investors that have access to this folder really don't care. Like, they'll do it. They'll lose the earnest money for one. Like, they're just like, what it is, what it is. $1,000, I don't care. $2,000, non-refundable. It is what it is. I don't necessarily recommend it, but with a lot of these, like, they're going to counter. They're not going to accept it because we're lowballing them. So when they counter, if it's like one of them, and I was telling you, Randy, one of them literally countered at, like, it was listed. Let me see if I can find it.
Well,
It might have actually been.
Let's just stick to the 190. So they countered back from 190 to 215. And then that's where you were like, okay, let me go now, take a look at it, because we're so close, and we might come back with a 200 or 205, and maybe the numbers will still make sense.
Honestly, the spread on that one, the 340 to 350, the investor was actually okay with offering their ask. Because it was a pretty minor rehab. It wasn't very big. So he was okay with actually offering their ask on that. And he was like, let's see if we can get some more numbers down. Now, Palmetto, just part of Tampa, it's closer to Bradenton, not very great. The street was 50-50. I still feel pretty confident in the ARV, but we went and walked the property, and like, landscaping needed a lot. Like, it was pretty bad. Whoever left it just literally left it. It's wood siding. So down in Florida, you don't necessarily want wood siding. It rains a lot. It's very high humidity. So once we got that counter, we just ended up letting it be. Because I went and walked it, and I was like, hey, honestly, we're probably a little bit off. Like, this was going to be a lot more than we expected.
So then what happened on that one? Then you finished. I want to know.
Yeah, so after we ended up walking it, so we ran it, we offered on it, we were comfortable with the asking price. They came back with a little bit down, and he said, he was like, I'm kind of comfortable with where it's at. Let's go take a video. So I went and took a video. I had a hard time getting in the property, but I gave him an idea of what the scope was going to be. I went back to the agent. I said, hey, we're pretty much going to be at that 190. He was like, for now, we're probably going to stick. And then we color coded the spreadsheet. So somebody else ended up coming in and offering on it. So it's pending. And then we go in and check, these and see where they're at in terms of their status. Cause let me find it. This North Cyrus one, like I said, it's gone on and off multiple times. This is one that was highlighted red, went back not red, vice versa. It just kept happening. So
what does what does red mean, or that?
Yeah. So red means pending, and then this purple means sold.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and we're gonna put a sold in here as well. Sold 173.9. So I think they took off like $1,300 from the list price. It was next to nothing. And then for these notes, like, I have stuff too, like, so we did put pending in here before we decided to color code it, but not offering, only part ownership being sold. So this is actually, this West Marjorie was a really good deal numbers wise. This West Marjorie one was a really good deal numbers wise. And the more we dug into it, it just kept getting weirder and weirder. Like, you only were buying 88% of the property ownership. So there's still going to be somebody who owned 12%. So when you go to sell, you'd have to like figure out a way to get them to release that 12%, either with a payoff or something. It was just a bunch of stuff. The septic failed, the well failed. So they had all that in the notes.
So let me go back. I want to just kind of bring this home, this topic here. So based on what I'm hearing is that you have the spreadsheet, right? You're not going to these properties, and I agree. Like, once you get good on market analysis and you start understanding the rehab numbers that your investors are using,
Yeah.
we stopped going to properties as well until we got basically a counterback or, you know, to that nature. Then we would go and look at it and re-inspect it. So that's really the only way you can scale that, right? Because
Yeah.
it's impossible for Eric to go to all these 25 properties. Like, that's ridiculous, right? And it seems like you submitted offers out of these, whatever, 25 on this spreadsheet. You submitted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 offers were submitted. And then where it says comps sent, then the investor chose not to submit offers. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah. And some of them we submitted an offer. Like this one, this West Marjorie, the offer was sent and we literally just rescinded because there was so much with that property. The more we just like kept digging into it. Like as we're writing, like as the offer was being finalized, once we finally got the property disclosure from the agent and everything else, I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. So we were just like, just take it off. So, but yeah, like 6th Avenue, once we offered, we went out and looked at it. Radcliffe, once we offered, we went and got a counter. We went and looked at it. Monitor, once we offered and got it accepted, we went and looked at it. And this one actually was a weird one too, because we had the conversation with our investor that, hey, this is actually a duplex, not a single family. It's listed as a single family. So I'm like, we're still keeping an eye on this to see if it falls out. But they had it listed way lower than they should have. So, and when we sent the original offer and got the counter, that wasn't something we expected. By the time I made it out there a day later, they had an offer accepted, but we would have been much higher had we known that.
Yeah. So like how many weeks, it would be good to kind of like, what are we looking at? This is like a month or 2 of you being out there looking for good opportunities. What is this equal to roughly?
This is all about 2 weeks actually. So when we came down to Tampa, we actually like took a little hiatus. And then once we started with our investors, we were just gathering numbers, getting on wholesalers lists. The other thing I'm going to start adding into this as something I've thought about recently, what I want this to be is like any investor that we work with, I want this to be like their main hub, like almost like an investor MLS. I want them to be able to come in and have our comps, which they're sent via email to these investors, but I'm going to attach them right here there's going to be another field beside photo video. I want it to have comps. I want it to have photo video. If it's a good enough deal, we'll just go out there and take a look at it, have the numbers, have the list price, have everything we can in it. And then investors can go in and just call us and say, hey, this one looks like a good deal. Let's go ahead and write an offer. Hey, this one looks like a good deal. Let's go ahead and write an offer.
So, and how long did it take you to, you know, learn the market values roughly, right? I mean, let's say you're not an expert, of course, of Tampa yet, but
Yeah.
what did that take you? How many months or I don't know, weeks? Like, were you felt comfortable?
I would say just a couple of weeks, because you'll start to notice like, and that doesn't mean that even in Cincinnati, like there's pockets that are really tough to nail down. But it doesn't take much more than a couple of weeks to understand that like a 3-1 in this location is going to go for roughly this amount, or with the square footage. You'll learn pretty quickly how much a pool actually adds in the market. Garages, and some locations, garages aren't important. In Florida, just with storms, a lot of people prefer a garage. So that actually does have a pretty large impact on value. Same with Cincinnati. It's cold, it's snowy. A lot of people want garage just for storage. So here, I mean, really, we feel pretty comfortable, at least on the locations we focus in on.
Okay, cool. So it's good, because I mean, we literally did something very similar. We did it, you know, in-house for ourselves. We were the investor, right? Submitting offers and had spreadsheets like this, and we still do. Now we use Podio. I don't know if you guys heard of Podio, but it's a software that you can customize it like tremendously, with a lot of different tasks you can put in there, notifications that just kind of thinks for you, right? Versus a Google sheet, you have to kind of remember to check it and follow it and, you know, color code it. So like literally that's what I had, similar to what Eric is saying when we were starting out. we had a Google sheet with just a bunch of color coding, right? And we only went through a small percentage of those houses, right? But you
Yeah.
can only really do that when you start having confidence in market values, a little bit of context on the rehab numbers, so you can start understanding what your investors, rough numbers are. And those numbers, honestly, you can find out from those serious investors. Like, hey, if I showed you this property, would you, off the MLS, and you're looking at photos, assuming it needs this, and this, what number would you throw out? And the serious ones, they will be able to, like, oh yeah, that's like typical, whatever, 80 grand, right? Perfect. And then eventually you're going to start having that number gauge, and where you can literally do that on their behalf, because at the end of the day, there's not much there's not much on the risk factor. Like if they just submit an offer, they see an offer in an inbox from Eric, they're going to just trust him that he ran the numbers based on their experience and conversations that they've had leading up to it, and they're going to just start signing offers, right? And then boom, Eric is submitting these offers like it's every week, few offers go out. And then what I know from my experience, and I want to ask you, Eric, we found that most of the properties we ended up getting are when the first one falls out of escrow. Like it falls out, and it's the prime time for the investor who follows up, which in this case is you, or it was us, and then boom, snatch that property up, right?
Yeah. Ours was definitely following up, but too, like, there's a lot of sellers out there that just love there's a lot to an investment offer, like an investor's offer, that is a huge, like, we close in 7 days. We do no inspections. And this was in Cincinnati. Down here, investors are a little bit different just because of insurance reasons and stuff like that. But, you can kind of make the offer stand out. So we'd be one of the lowest offers on the poll. And the seller was like, that's the least amount of stress. I'm going with that one. Or it was a situation where they had to get out or they had to move somewhere, so they would go with us. So that was probably our biggest thing. They were just like, you're not going to do inspections or anything like that. We'll take it.
So I want to share something on that. And after I'm done, I want you to share what you shared with me a few days ago about how you go after, the ones that are sitting there longer, right? Because I love that strategy, and I think most investors don't pay any attention to it. So keep that thought. But what I was going to add on what you're saying is, one of the things that I know worked for us too is when we're, wanting to submit an offer, one of the questions we can ask the agent, like, look, how much time, would we have, or can you give us if we were to submit an offer that has no contingencies, close in 7 days with no contingencies for our investor who's really serious? Can you give us 3 days to run our inspections, right? When are you reviewing offers? And how much weight will that carry for the seller if they saw an offer with no inspection contingency? Basically, that's it. If they accept it, it's a done deal. And a few of the agents will tell you, like, oh, look, like, they would love that because they actually just fell out of escrow and they just had a terrible experience with this first investor. They just want to be done with it. So if you can be anywhere close to this number and you waive inspections, I can tell you're going to rise to the top, right? And that's the nuggets I'm looking for. Like, what is it that's going to allow my offer to rise to the top? Maybe not as the highest offer, but the best terms, right? And then boom, that's the magic words I want to hear. And then I would literally go, and that's where you do want to then go to the property at that point, right? Including with your, GC or whoever you're using, so you can, with confidence, remove all your contingencies and then submit an offer that you have to then buy at that point, right? And that has worked for us over time, many, many times. But you need to make sure that they give you that, time, and tell you that, look, we're not going to review offers. The next offers are coming in for the next 3 days. So if you can get me that offer before that, I feel like you're going to have a really good chance because of coming in as is with no inspections. Because I know most investors, they will submit a 7-day closing, 10-day closing, and most will have a 3 or 4 day inspection contingency, right? So it still gives them that out. So it still leaves that doubt for the seller or the listing agent as well. And that is sometimes enough to bump them to in second position, especially if they just lost an escrow, if the first investor backed out, like they don't want to deal with it anymore, so that's something I wanted to share that really worked for us. But I'm going to go back to you, Eric. Talk about that, like how you use that other strategy that I started talking about of properties that are sitting on the market longer.
Yeah, so the thing we ran into after doing this for a while, because like I said, we did most of our deals off of MLS deals, was then it got so competitive, like right after the COVID, like there were so many investors out there that we couldn't lock anything up on market. We're like, what is going on? Like these other people were willing to outbid us. They were willing to do things we weren't willing to do. So what we ended up deciding to do was I would go on there and I would actually start looking at stuff that had hit on day market targets. So, and it just depends, like Cincinnati right now, our on day market average is 2 days. So if something sits for 2 weeks, then I would say there's probably a good chance that, it's going to take some sort of offer less than. And then if it's been on for, like down here, our average days on market is 50. So if it's been on for 2 weeks, it's still in a prime thing when the seller's like, hey, we've got plenty of time. So we try to look for ones that have been sitting on the market for a little bit longer, and we find out why. Like sometimes it's, the monitor one that I was showing you in Sarasota, that's a duplex. Sometimes agents just list things wrong. Some people see opportunities that they miss. Some people run their comps incorrectly. Sometimes they have a high scope. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it that we would look at.
Yeah. And what do you call that? When it comes to those in particular, I guess, did you ever hear, I'm sure this is part of the story, like, because usually it's overpriced, right? When it's sitting there longer and the seller is stubborn for the first, let's say, month or more. Have you heard those stories? And then all of a sudden the agent is giving you the insights about it and then say, look, I think the seller is kind of getting fed up a little bit, and it's all about it's more timing at that point more than anything. And you can slip right in and then get it for, let's say, $100,000 less than what it's listed for, which would shock more people, right?
Yeah, and two, sometimes when stuff is overpriced, sometimes when stuff is overpriced, nobody will offer. They're just like, the seller's overpriced, I'm not gonna throw in an offer. It's like, what's the worst they can say? But typically, if we knew that it was sitting just because it was overpriced, like maybe scope wasn't that crazy or anything like that, it was just sitting because it was overpriced. What we would do is we just talk to the agent, and they would typically, they complain to us, sadly, we're agents, and they're like, hey, that sucks. Like, I want to get this listing sold. We're overpriced. Like, obviously you can see that. So I would always talk to the listing agent and say, well, do you want us just to throw in an offer? That way you can submit it to your buyers. And that way you can say, hey, this is what people think their property is worth. And I was like, we're not just going to like throw in some crazy super low offers, our legit offer, but would you like us to throw it in? You can take it to your buyer and see what they think of it. And then it kind of gives that buyer like this is what, or that seller, this is what my property is this is what people think it's worth, or this is the offer we have on the table. Maybe I was too high.
Yep, got it. Yeah, I know. So I guess what I want to make sure everybody gets out of this, like, don't disregard those high price list homes where numbers completely make no sense, because you never know what the story is. And I know a lot of times it's the agent that is getting more frustrated than anything, but they didn't want to say no to the listing, right?
Yeah.
And they sit on the listing, and then eventually they start basically getting feedback for their own client and be like, look, here's one offer we just got. It's $100,000 less or $50,000 less. So most likely this is where we're going to land, but the seller might still be in denial, right? And all you have to do is stay in touch with that agent until eventually that seller gets to reality. And the truth is, there is a high chance there's no other offers on the table except yours.
Yeah.
Right?
There's one that we, and I've told this one before, but it actually fits perfectly with this. There's one that, because we did this, it kept appearing in my email up in Cincinnati. And I'm like, this house just like, it won't sell. Like, I don't know what it is. So I checked the days on market for Zillow, and it had been on for like 300 or maybe even 400 days. Like, it had been on for over a year. I know that. So it was like 390 or like 400 days. So I called the agent, like, what is going on with this? So the property was being sold by American Homes for Rent, which is just a company that They buy en masse and they just rent it out. It's usually just a bunch of hedge fund money purchasing it. So the property had literally, the listing description said cash only, property cannot be financed, basement has major foundational issues. So we went and walked it. It was listed at 230. We went and walked it. The basement was fine. The sump pump was not turned on. Nobody had it plugged in or operating. So there was moisture sitting down there. So they were like, foundation is shot, like it's over. So it was at 230. We offered 150. They took 165. We put 10 into it and we sold it for 240. And the appraiser was like, we just saw it was like recently bought. And I explained it to him, like, dude, this is like, they listed it wrong. I'm like, the foundation's fine. We have a structural engineer report right here that says there's nothing wrong with this foundation. They didn't have a sump pump plugged in, and there's moisture in the basement because of it. So, and it was just sitting there. It had been on for like 400 days. People wanted an offer on it. They were scared. People see foundation issues and they freak. We went and looked at it, and it was a sump pump not plugged in. So,
Wow, that's nuts.
yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. And it was, I didn't think our offer was going to get accepted. I was mad at my investor because like after we walked, I'm like, dude, we can offer like 180 on this and you're still going to get out clean. And he's like, let's do 150. And I was like, why? Like, don't do this. Like, this is, and we did 150 and they're like, they came back like 170. We're like, okay, 165, we'll call it a day. And it was just a home run deal.
Cool. So any questions on that? Because I want to actually show my MLS, a few things I want to show on it. But anybody has any questions for Eric? Anything he shared so far? Because I know he, we talk fast at times.
I have a couple questions.
It's definitely me. I'm sorry.
So, Eric, I might have missed this at the beginning, but the ones that you're making offers on, who's making those offers? Are you doing it, or you're working with an investor?
So we're working with an investor and making the offers, but I'm honestly at the point now where if the deal fits, I might just offer on it. Like if the deal has enough numbers or like has enough meat on the bone, I might just offer on it and then figure out a way to just double close a wholesale. Because there's ones I've run across where investors, the one thing that you'll kind of learn with some investors is they love to drag their feet. Like it's like hurry up and wait. So like some of my investors are like, oh, I love it. And then it's like, okay, let's get an offer. And it's like 4 days later, we're submitting an offer. And I'm like, what has happened in this time frame? But yeah, it's my investors that are offering.
So as an EXP agent, you haven't run into any issues with wholesaling yourself, assigning contracts?
It's different to every state. We're not necessarily assigning it. We're just writing it as buyer's agents. And then if I did purchase them and wholesale, I would double close or I would wholetail. So I'd purchase it in my name with the cash we have and then get it over.
And Philip too, I know your question is very specific, and I know we have a mix of agents, so this is not just for EXP agents, but to answer your question in general terms, you should not have issues, and let's talk offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There's ways to do it without getting in trouble. And then somebody else asked, are you writing all assignable contracts? Some of my investors do want, Florida's really weird. If you look at the way the contract is set up, you can have, it's a field on the contract. It's assignable and with release, and then assignable without release. So, and the with release is you're releasing all of you can assign the contract and have no risks. So it goes on to, if it falls through, you don't lose your earnest money or anything like that. Without risk or without release is like, yeah, you'd get in trouble or you could be sued or lose your earnest money.
Okay, cool. And then I had another quick question. I was at an investor event, a networking event a couple weeks ago, and I met this wholesaler, and he was interested in working with me to get access to my MLS account. And he was telling me that if you allow me to use your MLS account, then if I find deals, then I will use you, or I will have whoever the buyer is, you would be representing that buyer as the agent. And it sounds like you're essentially doing that with you're researching on the MLS. You're essentially doing that yourself.
Yeah.
And I couldn't I didn't feel comfortable giving some other third party access to my MLS.
I wouldn't give it to somebody you don't trust. I will say that my MLS access in Cincinnati, hopefully nobody from Cincinnati is watching this, is shared with many of people. So my login, that people I trust, like my hard money lenders and stuff, if they need to run comps, I have no problem throwing in my MLS access to log in to do it. Wouldn't give it to a third party person. We're kind of doing it in a way, but also the way I would pitch it to him would say, hey, we can't give our MLS access. I can get in trouble by my board. Why not instead, if you find a property, I'll run the numbers necessary. It's an IDX feed. All of our properties that are on the MLS are also on Zillow. I mean, honestly, half the properties I found weren't even the email search. They were literally just on Zillow, because I would, and out of boredom, would start searching Zillow, find a property that had been sitting for a while. So why not, hey, you look at Zillow or something like that, or I'll bring some properties to your attention. That way you can build that relationship. And if you're not comfortable with it, you're not just kicking the guy to the road.
So Philip, I've had that happen a lot, right? Where, because the investors in my area know, like, I'm not going to go out there and do what Eric is doing. I choose not to do that. That's not my business plan, where I'm going and hunting for opportunities for them, submitting offers. That's just not my style. And I tell them, look, you got to build as many relationships with agents as possible, right? And even go through the listing agent if you can, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's my way of doing business, period. And then I end up getting the listing usually on the back end. That's what I'm after, right? But what I would say is, like, the ones that I got to know and I built trust with, and I like them and they're serious, I would not give them MLS access. One, because most MLSs have a IP tracking, and eventually they might actually fine you. So that's common. But some states allow an MLS assistant login. So you're in California, right, Philip?
Right.
So California, at least Southern California, they allow it. So it also you have to check with your board, right? And you can actually sign up that investor as your assistant for the MLS. And then they're going to have their own login, and that they pay for, and it's like cheap. It's like $150 a year, right? But now you're completely kind of removed from doing something that you're not allowed to, right? Because now they have their own login. They can do what they need to do, right? But again, would I do that with, like, someone I just met on, a networking event, and then set up an MLS login assistant next week? No, right? I would get to know them. I would understand the business model. I would build that relationship. And then with those, I'm fine. And literally, when I had my own brokerage years ago, I mean, we probably had like 20 MLS assistants, and we would spread them out through different realtors, that were working with investors, and they didn't care. Like, yeah, because if they find stuff, because that cuts a lot of work from you, the agent, right? If they can go on there and they could do their own comms, they can do all the research. That takes a lot of time, which that's why I'm like, man, Eric, what he does is amazing. You have to get good at it in order to be able to do what Eric is doing. And you can't go to all the properties. Like, that's impossible, right? But check with your state, and then really check with your board if they even have that as an option. And that you can always kind of have in the back of your pocket, Philip, with the serious investing. Be like, look, I can't give you mine. However, here's what I could do. Right?
Yeah, I think that's what he was proposing, was that he would be set up as kind of an assistant.
Yeah. So then, get to know them, and then that could work. That's not that big of a deal. Like, there's very little he could do and mess up, because he's not a realtor. He can't go and look at houses. He will not get access to the key cards. He will not get access to contracts. He literally only will have access. It's like, imagine Zillow had a password. Like,
yeah,
that's all it is. So it's like, I don't really see much of liability for you, right, with that person. But I also wouldn't just give it to anybody.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Okay.
And I would say our MLS is like, at least Cincinnati's is like, it's just Zillow. Like, it's literally no different, just with some search tools. So like, if it had any personal information in there, it'd be a no-go, but I don't put my clients in there or anything. I do all my searches through my website. But I mean, I'd do it. It's a good way to, I mean, the assistant route, but it's a good way to build a relationship and then have a conversation with him. And you could also probably figure out how often he's in that MLS or what he's looking at and follow up with him that way.
And you know, every time they log in, they think of you.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, I have access to it because of Philip. So there is a high chance that then that investor will think of you and include you when he can in their transactions. Right. So yes, I think it's something to really consider, but build a relationship.
And then we have another person in the chat. Lois said she's concerned about it in Illinois. I'm assuming the assignable contracts wholesaling.
Yeah,
I
I talked to Louise. Yeah. So
Okay.
her and I had several conversations about it. So we're
states are
every
cracking down on it a little bit.
Every brokerage is going to have their own rules and guidelines. And I can tell you some big brokerages just straight up saying no wholesaling as an agent. That also was the way it was at EXP, but things are changing and they're being open to it, but you have to get approved. And I know how to get approved. So just, you know, again, I don't want to take this conversation to a conversation about EXP because there's other agents here from other companies. So let's stick to the topic. We have less than 9 minutes left. Here's what I want to show real quick. So this is more on the market side, like when you're analyzing your market. And you know, it's crazy how quickly Eric has learned his market and, you know, his new market in Tampa. But it's really truly possible when you have access to the MLS. It's that easy. But one big mistake, I mean, there's few, but one big mistake that I see a lot of new investors and new realtors do is, you know, when they analyze ARVs, right? And one of the things that, I don't know if, you know, everybody knows this, but like if there's a rehab opportunity on the busy street, I don't just, you know, go and basically, let's say it's on right here on Crown Canyon Road, the property, and I have to pull comps. And I want to use the map view, which I do a lot, right, to pull the comps. I don't just go and draw a polygon, you know, as close, you know, what they say within 1 square mile, which I try to be even closer. I don't just do that, right? Because will that really get me the comps I'm looking for? The chances of finding another property by just doing the polygon or 1 mile radius on the busy street, the chances of finding that are low. So instead, first, what I try to do, let me cancel that out. And then I say, okay, how many busy streets do we have around this area? And there's a couple. All right. So then I'm going to go and I'm going to draw a bunch of these polygons. And I'm going to be very, very specific to stay on the busy street. Literally, I will do this over and over again. And then I will add another polygon. Stay by the busy street. Like this. And I would have 10 of these polygons all over the radius, right? Because I'm honestly want to compare apples to apples, right? Because it is so hard to adjust pricing if something is not on a busy street versus being. And if your subject property is on a busy street, like, good luck. Like, you can't just use non-busy street. And here's how I would do it, right? I would even go to the point where I would rather stay within, let's say, the rate that's close. I like, you know, half a mile radius or less. And I honestly don't even use the radius. I only use the polygon because I know that if I cross over this street, things can change. If I go over this highway, things can change. And then if it's a busy street scenario, then I do literally this. And if still no comps show up, then I would rather go back more than 6 months, like even 12 months, than go further out. And here is why, because markets, I mean, the regions can change dramatically if I go further out. But if you start understanding your market and how the market has appreciated in that pocket over time, I can easily adjust a comp that sold, let's say, 12 months ago on the busy street compared to what it should sell for today. because it's on a busy street. And I also know the appreciation factor for that market in general. And at least I'm comparing a busy street comp versus a busy street comp. So the only thing now I got to figure out is what is the appreciation that has taken place in 12 months in this area. Does that make sense? I know it's a bit like more deeper of a analysis, but anybody who has question on that, what I'm trying to achieve.
And I wonder too, like if we ask the question, because I know me and Randy have talked about this, do you guys think it would be helpful, like one of these sessions to kind of talk about comps? Because I know the breakout session last time we had some people that were interested on learning like how we run the comps, and there's so much that goes to it. I think you could spend way more than an hour, but I think just a good idea, like maybe pick out a couple of properties, give you an idea. We could pick like a rural property and how we do it, or something that sits on a busy road. Is it something you guys would want? Like we could record it and post it in the Facebook group separately, like something like that, or I could record it and send it. Cause I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with when they start out or they're doing it. And there's not a lot of help with there.
Yeah. If you're interested in that, we can do it live, pull up some hard properties. Like I give you an example, like right now I have a property, it's a townhome, and there's no townhomes in the immediate area. Like, how do you comp that? Right. And I'm not looking for an answer right now, but that's an example of one where it's like, most agents wouldn't know what to do. Like, well, what do I do? Oh, well, then I'm going to go further out and find townhomes like 2 miles away. Like, well, really? But that's a whole different market. And then what if, like, how do you, is an appraiser going to do that? I don't know about that. Like, these are the things that are more challenging, but that's also where you can find deals as an investor if you start understanding how to comp the ARV on the harder ones, right? Because that's where the gold lies, man. Less people are eyeing it.
Yeah, and my team members, when I brought them on in Cincinnati, that was like one of the things that I first sat down with them and I said, you'll have so much confidence if you can run an ARV on property or run a comp report, and you can say to a seller or a buyer, you can say, this is what this property is worth, and I'm willing to bet that this is like I'm telling you, like you almost get to the point where you almost feel like an appraiser. You're like, this is, and obviously we're not, but it gives a lot of confidence. You can have that discussion. You can say this house sat for this long because it was overpriced this much, or the square footage differences here. So once I taught them that, I noticed the appointments, because we'd go on appointments with them still, it was completely different. They could go into it and they knew what they were talking about. They knew why it was priced that way. It's a huge part of the housing, so definitely helpful.
All right, so it seems like it will be good. We got a few yeses here in the chat, and then I'll finish with this. Emily, so she's asking, are you writing all assignable contracts? Is a Florida car contract automatically assignable, or you have to write it in, or it's not assignable?
There's it's actually a field on the contract that you would select. So that's the one where it's like with release and without release for your risk that you're taking on. So there's ones that you can literally do assignable and you hold it's no risk. Agents won't accept it. Like I've sent 1 million of them and they're just like, no. And I'm like, that's fair. Like one of my investors, that's all he wants. But yeah, they're assignable.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and same in California. We have it now in the contract where you have to actually check an area to make it assignable.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, it's not. I think you could put a limit on the days on it even. So I think it's becoming more acceptable, and more boards of realtors and states are talking about it. Where I know, for example, Louise, right? She's from I believe Illinois, and there you have to be licensed to wholesale.
Yeah.
And this is where things are going. This is where the industry is trending now, that more and more states are going to actually require investors to get their license. Just watch. This wave is coming, and there's a few states, I forget which ones exactly besides Illinois, that is now a requirement.
Which is good too, because it holds everybody to a higher standard. I know I've had the discussion too we have that discussions actually with some of the people's houses that we go to buy. We go, look, we're licensed. So if by any means you think we screw you over, you can go to my board and I'll get fined or lose my license or something like that. Like there's accountability. So like if I tell you one thing and something else happens, whereas like if you're an unlicensed wholesaler, sadly what we see a lot of times in this business is there is no repercussion. So it's the Wild West. So
yeah. All right, cool. It's top of the hour here. So good to see everybody here. Good group. But maybe then next time you want to run live comms next week, next
yeah, I think it'll be good.
First Thursday of September. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, cool. All right, guys. See you later. And don't forget, join our Facebook community. Links is in the chat, and subscribe to the YouTube if you can. Love that. And see you in a few weeks.
See you guys.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.